Welcome once again to Tarot Tuesday. My name is Shannon Douglas, and today we're covering off the number 19 card of the Major Arcana. We've been waiting for this for a while. The Sun. Here's a quick way of thinking about the Sun. It ties to the image itself. And that is of a baby, a child between sort of 6 months and a year old, lost in uncontrollable fits of giggles. If you've ever had the opportunity to stimulate this kind of full body, shaking like a bowl of jello, laughter in a child, right? That's the Sun. Today I'm going to talk about a bunch of different manifestations of the Sun archetype. And at the end of the video, I've got something special for you. So make sure you stay tuned to the end because I'm going to take you through a solar induction, which is a way of connecting maybe a little bit to that deep, full body bowl of jello kind of giggling laughter and pulling down the solar archetype into our body. Now that might be useful if you're a practicing mystic, magician, shaman. Some of the deep underlying principles and understandings of those is that we can have any kind of state that we've ever had or that we can vividly imagine in any moment. We can pull down an energy into our system and fully bring it into being. So stick around. Now, the solar card, the Sun, number 19, follows a couple of doozies, a couple of big ones we've covered over the last few weeks. The Devil, the Tower, the positive omens that we start to see in the Star card, that promise of something better to come. The lunar energies where we're starting to really see and be able to recognize the structures of the unconscious, and we can see that pathway through the two pillars into the holiest of holies. What is the Sun pointing to? The Sun is pointing to an enlightenment, plain and simple. It's a shift in a way of being and a realization of our potential in a moment. Now, how does this apply to a young child who's giggling in fits of laughter? Well, they've just been born. That's a pretty dark night of the soul to go through, going through the birth canal, coming into an unfriendly, cold world, suddenly being hungry, and having no reference points on the world at large. Over the last while, I've been studying and doing a lot of reading on developmental psychology and the process that human beings go through as we grow and evolve. And I think we're patterned and we've come to sort of a set of beliefs based on developmental psychology that we stop growing at a certain point. The child psychologists, developmental psychologists historically have sort of stopped at the age of 18 or 20 when we're basically in an adult body. But what we know now from scientific studies, which is, wow, suddenly new, because we've known this from esoteric studies and mystical studies and practices and traditions all over the world, that we actually go through stages of growth and development right into old age. And there are states of consciousness and structures of moral views that very rarely manifest themselves before an individual is 50 years old. Sometimes they do. But what I mean by that is the accumulation of wisdom and the capacity to interact with the world from a perspective of wisdom. And there are at least 2 stages of development in adult life beyond our teenage years. Our brains don't stop developing till we're 25, right? I told my teenagers when they were still teenagers, like, I love you, I respect you as a person, but you still only have half a brain. And so we continue to develop through life. And there is a process of developing through a stage of our humanity. That baby, that giggling child, has come into the world separated from their mother and suddenly confronted with the archetypal patterns of existence in the language of the psychologist Robert Keegan, who's a Harvard professor of psychology, we are embedded. We've moved from being embedded in our mother's womb to being embedded in an environment and relationship with our mother. And a young child or a baby doesn't even know the difference between their body and the rest of the world. There isn't any psychological or perceptual distinction. That starts to develop over time as we develop a sense of self versus other. But that doesn't happen it doesn't happen immediately after birth. It happens within the first couple of years of life. Typically, I'm going to say between the ages of 9 months and 21 months. I might be getting this wrong, but I want you to get the gist of this. Now, it might come as a surprise that there's sort of a progression through these stages, and each stage is a way of transcending the embeddedness that we're currently in. So the before a child is born, like I said, embedded in the environment of the womb. After a child is born, embedded in the relationship with mother for nourishment and care and energy and attention. And when we get into the terrible twos, the child has recognized the self and other and is starting to develop a will and starting to force or impose its distinction between itself and its environment through that process. We get into kind of like the 5, 6, 7-year-old embeddedness. And at each level we go through a sort of a rising tension or an escalating set of conflicts, internal conflicts, potentially external conflicts. A teenager going through kind of the rebellious or sullen years or being angry at parents and going through that emotional stage is another way to describe or another example of this rising tension within a developmental stage. Now we get into these in adulthood. As I've been thinking about the Sun card over the last week, I've been thinking about kind of where we are in the calendar. It's currently November the 10th. And by the way, I live in a northern climate. Well, let's say mid-northern in Ottawa, Canada. It does get pretty cold here in the winter. And it has not been unusual over my lifetime to have seen snow at Halloween and to have to dress up in put our costumes over our winter snowsuits. But today, it's going to be 22 degrees Celsius. That's like, what do you call that in Fahrenheit? That's about 75 degrees, between 75 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's bold and beautiful sun. It's been incredible. Now, this embeddedness that I was talking about, this rising tension, is a process where we've got to psychically get uncomfortable with our current position. There's got to be some, like if you shake up a can of soda or beer, it builds up tension inside, and then when you crack the top, you release the tension. This is part of the process of moving from one stage to the other. Now, I've been thinking about, speaking of the calendar, about what my journey has been over the last couple of years. I've gone through a midlife crisis. I'm turning 50. I've mentioned that a bunch of times. And typically at certain stages of life, we go through a reflection period. And I've been reflecting on the nature of purpose, my own purpose in the world, and how I can make a contribution now that my kids are grown and gone. Who am I? What's important to me in terms of my values? What's my moral structure and architecture? And as you may know, I wrote a book. And now, for the last 4 months, I've been going through a meditation and a contemplation on the major archetypes of tarot, the Major Arcana, which seems to me a fitting kind of process. Now, during that time, sufficient tension built up between me and the world maybe we can talk about this on a sort of abstract level, that I ceased to fit in the environment, the professional environment that I was in. And it was becoming clear to me, and it became clear within my environment that place that I was at wasn't serving me anymore. And so this tension popped. This happens at numerous different levels of environment. And when that thing pops, boom, there we are in the light of day. I mean, it's hard as hell when the tower crumbles. And it may seem in that dark night of the soul like the world is ending. And from a developmental standpoint, every time we move through one of these stages, the tower collapses. It does seem like the world is ending. And suddenly we're forced into this new way of being, a new way of interacting with the world. And we see some kind of omen. We see the star present itself, that this is our guiding principle now. This is our guiding light. And we can then start to see some of the unconscious structures, perhaps, and some of the old patterns of behavior. That crustacean, that crab or lobster crawling out of the water in the moon card, the instincts and drives at the unconscious level that have up to that point been movers for us at an unconscious level, and then to be able to be birthed into the sunlight. The sun card, I might think in terms of calendar or terms of the time of year, and perhaps you too, as the 21st of June. This is the longest day of the year. It's not yet super hot. If you're in the northern hemisphere, that is. It's not yet super hot because it takes another month or month and a half for the heat to really accumulate in the ground and in the atmosphere until we start to get those really potentially, where you are, I don't know, oppressive kind of temperatures of the summer heat. But on the 21st of June, the full glory, the longest day of the year, the sun shines on us and represents, of course, the Yan external drive, creative energy. So the sun, not a small archetype. The word sun, as in solar sun, and the word sun, as in son of mine, are, as you know, they sound the same. They're phonologically ambiguous. Homonyms is what I learned in grade school. They're homonyms, but they also have an etymological connection. So they're interchangeable in some languages, that the sun, the sky, and the sun, a male child, are referenced using the same word. And some people argue that Jesus, the Son of God, is actually a personification of the sun up in the sky. Jesus says the Son of God, no lie, but they might be talking about the sun up in the sky, the sun that hangs on the cross of the zodiac with 12 signs to be exact. That's KRS-One from I Got Next, track called Free Throws. I think it's fourth quarter free throws. Tremendous lyrical story of astrology and the role of the sun in the sky, and the sun in astrology and the symbol itself. Every culture in the world just about has a personification of the sun in God form, and stories about the nature of the sun. In the Greek traditions, it was Apollo who rode the solar chariot. In Egypt, it was a solar boat across the sky every day. And a number of we call them solar cults, of major empires. The king or the emperor was believed to be a personification or the embodiment of the solar god. The solar god was the principal god in the pantheon, and the king was deemed to be a representative or even an embodiment of the sun itself. Okay, What's one more aspect of the sun? I'm going to go back to that crustacean, that lobster in card number 18, crawling out of the water. And I mentioned last week that, there's been a lot of talk about lobsters in the unconscious mind over the last couple of years because Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, has used that as an example. And one of my followers made a comment, not a fan of Jordan Peterson, totally appreciate that. And you kind of either love him or you hate him. I'm of the mind that I take from sources, analyze, find what's valuable, let go what's not, and kind of move along. But that crustacean, that lobster, in Peterson's analogies and stories, represents a hierarchical process and a position on what he called the dominance hierarchy. Now, hierarchies in some frames on the world, from some viewpoints, let's say, a hierarchy is a bad thing because there's a recognition at that level of belief and idea that we're all human beings and we're all the same, regardless of our skin color, our height, our weight, our ableness, our language, our family of origin, our profession. And those are laudable and noble beliefs. And we see in the world that hierarchies have become toxic. Political hierarchies, corporate hierarchies, educational hierarchies have become corrupted and toxic and problematic. And there is another way of thinking about this because we talk about the baby, right? The uncontrollably giggling bowl of Jell-O baby that just keeps giggling over and over again. This set of hierarchies or sets of hierarchies can be viewed in two ways. One is an evolutionary or developmental hierarchy. I can say that I am more developed than I was 10 years ago, and certainly more developed than I was 20 years ago, and certainly more developed than when I was well known for being a giggling baby. Certainly far more developed. And that implies a progression of development through stages. And that's what's called an evolutionary hierarchy or a developmental hierarchy, which is a normal progression of human experience and achievement. And there comes a point in life, or maybe many points in life, and maybe one stands out for you in particular, where you had a big victory. We just had one of those. Declared on Saturday night, Joe Biden declared the winner of the election. Big victory. I remember a bicycle race I was in when I was about 6 years old. I lived in a little town in the Atacama Desert in Chile, and there were only a handful of bicycles in the town, and there was a big parade and festival, and then there was a bicycle race, and I won the bicycle race. It was all the way down Main Street, and I just pedaled like crazy, and I was so thrilled with being on a bike and the wind in my blonde hair and the sun in the sky. And you can imagine in a desert, the sun has that warm feeling on your face all the time. It just soaks through your clothes and rests in your bones, kind of sun. And I crossed that finish line, and the whole crowd was cheering. I've had victories like that in my professional career where we created such amazing results, or we won an incredible deal, or developed a brand new relationship, or was recognized for long achievement. Those moments of standing in the sunlight, standing in the spotlight, and being able to own that. Now, that kind of feeling comes first internally. We've got to be able to hold on to that. If there are psychic structures that we have that reject or are afraid of recognition and accomplishment, we're never going to be able to stand in the recognition of others and accept it. So at an unconscious level or at a personal level, we've got to be able to find our own victory. We've got to be able to recognize those moments in the sun that we have. Stephen Covey said, public victory follows private victory, or private victory precedes public victory. And that victory, that victorious sense, that riding in on the horse in glory, is about a major, major accomplishment. So from a divinatory standpoint, we're talking about a major life transition, recognizing the newness and fullness of that, being able to get oneself oriented within the new embedded moral, psychic, and psychological landscape, and to be able to shine. It's very difficult after we transition out of one level of development to another to go back to the old way of doing things. And these rites of passages have been celebrated broadly through human civilization and society. But largely, we're in a unique situation as a human species at the moment, because only in the last 150 years have we had consistent medical technology where we moved our average life expectancy from 45 to 50 years old for a man, less for a woman, because of high infant mortality and maternal mortality, to having average life expectancies averaging in our 80s in the Western world. So a woman is 85, 86 based on the last actuarial tables I looked at. Men are a couple of years shy of that. And we've never had this period of time where so many of us have been able to move from parenthood into post-parenthood, empty nesters. And that presents a whole shift, psychological shift. It's like I'm rediscovering myself in ways that I had completely forgotten about since I became a parent. And I was have been a parental unit to 4 kids, 2 bio kids and 2 amazing stepkids. And now that they're grown and gone, we are reorienting ourselves in terms of meaning. We're remapping. And as the kids grew up and were in their teenager years, there was an awful lot of teenage energy and them moving through the next stage of their development into independence, the sulking and the brooding and the tantrum and the pushback and the exploration of identity and persona and all those things that teenagers naturally go through. And then boom, there they are, off to university, off to college, finding the next stage in their career, starting to integrate with an adult world. I promised at the end a special solar invocation. And you may have recognized the term or expression that I used, that you can have any state that you've ever had that you can either remember or vividly imagine at any time. That's actually from a body of practice called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It is significantly utilized by Anthony Robbins. I don't know if it's appropriate to call Anthony Robbins a coach, but inspiration for many millions of people and expert in transformative practice. So I'm going to take you through a little scenario, and I want you, as best as possible, to find a comfortable space. Don't do this while you're driving, because I'm going to help direct your attention into the imaginative space. And the more psychic resources that you have for doing that, the better off that you will have the experience of. And I'm going to guide you into that state, and then I'm going to clap my hands, and I want you to shift your thoughts to the Fool card. So we're going to go from the Sun card to the Fool card. And if you can visualize that. And giggling babies, maybe, I don't know. So I want you to reflect or remember a time, one of those victory moments, where, or perhaps it's as simple as being out in the middle of the summer in the glory of the sunshine and feeling the sun, the heat of the sun on your face, and being in a place that's so safe for you, or a moment that's so safe for you, like maybe it's lying on the beach with some friends and closing your eyes, or maybe it's being at a cottage, or maybe it's being on the water in some fashion, whether a paddleboard or a boat, or being in the moment in the sunshine and feeling that heat just penetrate your skin and warm your body. And if in your memory you're wearing a t-shirt and some shorts or a bathing suit, feeling the heat penetrate and hold itself in the cotton or in the fibers of the clothing, resting on your skin, so that the heat is getting into your bones, and you just feel this incredible warmth of the sun energizing you, and knowing that you're producing vitamin D and your body is absorbing all this, just like all the other animals of the earth, and saying to yourself the things that you say to yourself in those moments. Imagine closing your eyes and lying with the sun on your face, and noticing with your eyes closed that you can still see the light, and that the heat falls and penetrates your eyelids, and in your mind's eye or through your eyelids you can see the orange and the brightness of the daylight, and its kaleidoscopic images of light and orange. That's right. Feel it. All that heat. Now turn that up. Turn up the heat. Not sweating heat, but deep in the bones. Now, remember that giggling baby? That laughing bowl full of Jell-O baby? Right? And the Fool card? Okay, the Fool with his, what would you call it? Hobo stick. And a little white dog, about just innocence. That's right. Now, recall a victory. Now, you may or may not have a direct experience of this. Maybe it was winning the spelling bee. Maybe it was completing a paper. Maybe it was celebrating the victory of a family member or a child. Remember a victory that you had, a big accomplishment where you could feel that sense. And notice the things that you say to yourself. Now, if that doesn't come to mind immediately, imagine seeing another person in a victory like that. What might be a good example of an athlete who wins a cup or a pennant or a major celebratory victory? Imagine that you could see the world through their eyes in that moment of victory, and imagine the feelings that you feel. Imagine hearing the words after all the hard work and energy that you put in to achieve that great, and let that feeling run right through your whole body. One of these poses, this is actually fires neurons in your body. This is a classic victory pose. And that is a pose associated with the sun energy. When you actually do that, you can anchor that energy into your body and bring down the energy of victory, and that state of being where you are at the top of the evolutionary moment. See the crowds around you, hear the things that they say, imagine all the commentary and all the congratulations, and then remember that laughing bowl full of Jell-O baby giggling hysterically, and let's move our attention to the Fool card again, who is on the edge of a great vista of opportunity as they're beginning to embark on the journey of life. Now, sun on your skin, heat on your face and clothes, feeling the victory. That's right. Now, I want you to picture the sun card, the child on the horse, the giggling energy, that abandon to the joy of the moment, that we all experience. That's right. Now, think about the Fool card again. You may notice as we go through this process that it invokes some state. You may feel tingling. Sometimes when you go through an invocation like this, you feel chills, prickling in your scalp. And the more you can vividly imagine, the more you can hear the things that people are saying in that imagined scenario or that remembered scenario, and the more you can clearly articulate the things that you're saying to yourself and the experience of that energy coming through your body, the more you can draw it in. Now, picture the Sun card. If you're reading tarot for divinatory purposes, this is the one. This is an example of a big breakthrough, of a day in the sun, of the recognition that one earns through deserved, hard fought, and long journeys. That's Tarot Tuesday for today. My name is Shannon Douglas. I hope you enjoyed this. We got 2 more cards in the Major Arcana coming up. Judgment next week, which I am really looking forward to. And the final card, the number 21, the World. So make sure you stay tuned. Like and subscribe to get notifications. And I look forward to completing my Fool's journey just in time for my 50th birthday. My name is Shannon Douglas.
Ha 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 ha.